I'm Doug Massey, and today I'm going to share how I went from failing, like I was almost done. When I first started life insurance sales, I was not good. I was struggling. I was about to throw in the towel. And then I did one thing that changed everything for me overnight. And I ended up going from being like the worst agent at the agency I worked at to being one of the better ones. And then within, I want to say another month or two, I did a second thing that actually even stepped me up to the next level. At that point, I was the number one agent at our agency month after month. No one even came close to me. And I'm going to share exactly what I did. And I'm going to go over some things that you can actually do if you're struggling or having issues. Because the simple fact is life insurance sales, let me just back up one more. Sales is not really what most people think it is. And most of the time, it's not as easy to do as these recruiters make it sound when they go to recruit you and convince you to get your insurance license. So hopefully we're going to address that, and hopefully you're going to get some information that could change everything for you and really take you from struggling to being one of the best insurance agents in the country, period. Before we get into it, this is a great time to give the video a thumbs up, and I do suggest subscribing. We're putting out new insurance sales content and final expense sales training videos like all the time. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to get this bad boy, the policy summary that I've used when I was selling face-to-face, and it's the same summary that our telesales agents use. When I first got into the insurance industry, I ended up being recruited as a Hartford agent. Okay. I tried that for a few months. I tried it. And then I ended up going to a multi-level marketing company. And then I ended up going back to the Hartford. Okay. But when I was at that MLM insurance company, they convinced me to go to one of their conventions. Sounds familiar, right? They like to push that stuff. I did. And the one thing that I'll never forget, the one thing that always stuck with me, this is 15 years ago, guys. This speaker came out and said something like, if you're in the United States today, again, this was 15 years ago, guys, and you're not earning at least $100,000 a year, that's like going into a grocery store, sitting down at the bench and dying of starvation. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. When I first was recruited and got licensed, I had already been, I want to say, a professional salesperson. Now, my income was limited. The income didn't show it, but I had already been selling home improvements, concrete driveways, stuff like that for 10 years. So I already understood a lot of basics, and I was sold the dream of making a lot more money. And that's when I decided, okay, let's get the insurance license. I'm going to be a Hartford agent. We're going to do this thing. And let me tell you, it was hard. Really, I was only with them for, I want to say, selling for maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months. And I was doing terribly. And that's when I decided, well, wait, let me go try to do this elsewhere. So I made that move, went to the MLM. I'm not going to say exactly what happened. Basically, I was promised something that they did not give me, leads. They told me I could get all the fresh leads you want. I didn't get any. They totally jerked me around. And I was with them for a couple of months. And the next thing you know, here I am trying to get releases, and they wouldn't release me. So they recruited me on a line, then wouldn't release me. What did I do? I went back to the Hartford. But this time when I went back to the Hartford, I knew I was going to have to swallow my pride. I was going to have to accept, that the boss was just who he is. And if I wanted to make the kind of money that I knew I could make there, that I would have to make some changes. And that's what I did. So I went right back into struggling. And one of the things that happened was my boss was saying, listen, you got to record yourself. I need to hear what you're doing in the house. So I went and bought one of those recorders back then. And we're talking, again, 15 years ago. Back then you go to the supermarket or the drugstore and you buy the little recorder and you put it in your pocket, right? So I walk into the houses and I was too nervous to do it. I got the recorder on me and I wouldn't record. Finally, and here I am failing miserably. Finally, I did it. I pulled it out. I recorded myself with this lady, single lady with a baby, bought an apartment, a condominium. So she had a mortgage, no life insurance. And I walked out of there without a sale. When I listened to the recording, and I did ask her for permission and she was okay with me recording it. When I did listen to the recording, I was like, amazed at how horrible I sound. That's the only way to describe it. Everything I thought I was doing right, I was doing wrong. My tonality, some of the things I was saying, I'm thinking I'm saying something clear to her, and it's coming off as kind of vague and not very clear. I literally said, okay, that's it. So I remember going the next day, I went to the office and I told my boss about it. I said, I heard it. He's like, all right, let me hear it. I said, you don't need to hear it. Let me make the changes. I made immediate changes. From that day going forward, I literally went from being the worst in the office to being one of the better agents. I remember, I think I got like 2 sales in a row. So that was a good start. Like the first one I went to, this lady, one of the things I was doing wrong is I didn't have energy and enthusiasm in my presentation. So I sat down with another single lady. I'm being all energetic, exciting. I'm flapping my arms around while I'm talking, using all this body language. She at one point was laughing at me, not with me. She was laughing at me. But guess what? 40 minutes later, she handed me the check, signed on the dotted line, done. The next presentation I went to, same thing. Everything had changed for me. That was like one of the biggest aha moments that I had ever had in my life. Now, let's move forward. A couple months later, I'm doing pretty good. I'm not the best agent, but I'm up there, right? I'm up there. I'm definitely better than the middle, or maybe, leading the middle of the pack. Let's put it that way. And my boss was telling me, again, I had a good manager. The owner of the company really was the guy I didn't like. So the manager was really good. And he's like, look, you're letting these people off the hook too easily. And he was right, because we would have the conversations about what happened in the presentation. And the bottom line is, when they would say to me, we got to think about it, wife and I have to talk it over, or they'd give me any objection, I really didn't have a good method of dealing with that. And so again, my numbers were okay, but they weren't great. I decided, okay, all right. I was recording myself again. I did it a few more times. And then at one point I was like, wow, I'm really, really not doing anything when they give me an objection. And that was when everything changed. I decided, okay, enough is enough. I remember thinking this to myself: the next house I walk into, I am not walking out of unless I have a check or they throw me out. This was crazy. So I go to this couple, husband, wife, baby, a child, maybe 3-4-year-old. And he had a job. He had life insurance through his job. Her job was taking care of the house. She had the bigger job, really. And so I remember sitting with them, making my presentation. Now, back then we had this long sales presentation, like 40 minutes before you're showing the prices. So I remember doing my presentation, and here was the crazy part. Within the first couple of minutes, she looked to me and says, listen, I'm going to tell you something. They're both there. She says, he's not going to buy from you. He doesn't buy from anybody when he first meets somebody. And I was like, that's fine. I remember I blew past it. And then somehow, I think it even came up again. But then at the end, he gives me the, well, we got to talk about it. We got to think about it, whatever it was. And remember, I already decided at this point, I was not walking out of that house unless they threw me out. That is when everything changed that second time, because I fought for that sale. I said everything I could think of. I remember one of the things, he had the insurance, he had some life insurance through his job. And I remember saying, listen, you lose that job and you die, and you know what, your wife, I remember saying something like this: your wife's going to remember that I was here and that you didn't buy the insurance. Meanwhile, and I remember asking her, what's going to happen to you, if he dies? He's making all the money. And she said she was going to go live with her sister or mother or something like that. And I remember, so I reminded him, I said, look, she's going to be living with her mom thinking that SOB, all he needed to do was buy the insurance and take care of us. And he didn't even care for us enough to do the right thing and do that. So I remember back then I would make comments like that. And that was the first time I did that. So I'm basically throwing him under the bus. Push come to shove, he picks an option. He goes to get the check, and she's over here going, I can't believe he did that. He never does that. We were laughing about it. And I was like, of course he has to do it. He loves you. This is the most important insurance he's ever going to get for him, you, and the child. So at the end of the day, guys, that was when I hit that second level, and that was when everything changed. I literally overnight went from being one of the best agents to being the number one agent at that agency. And month after month, no one ever came close. Well, they would come close, but not close enough to where there was a question. I was always the number one agent at the Hartford agency that I was at in South Florida from that point on. Let's get into why you're probably having issues and what exactly actionable things that you can do about it. So first of all, most of the insurance agents that I speak with, the salespeople that have issues, they have a lack of the right training. They don't have the right products. They're not using their voice and tonality correctly. They don't have the right skill set, especially when it comes to handling objections. And they basically haven't done the work on themselves that they should have done in order to be a successful salesperson. Again, remember, by the time I started selling life insurance and was failing, I had already done all this stuff. I had already done the work on myself and understood the basics of overcoming objections in sales. I had already knew what to do. So I'm going to put this out to you. How are you expecting success when you don't know how to sell? I mean, that's what it all comes down to. You don't know how to sell if you're having issues selling. If you're not closing sales, selling the amount of insurance that you expect to sell, it's on you. It's probably because you haven't done the work. I've worked with different agents. Every now and then I get an agent who's like, well, I've been in sales for 20, 30 years. Life insurance sales. And I'll ask them, when they say that, I ask them, oh, awesome. How much money did you make last year? It's always, well, blah, blah. They give me an excuse first and then never tell me. It's always that way. So I know what this means. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay. So you've been trying to sell as much insurance as you can over the past 20 years, but you're not successful. I mean, that's what goes in my mind. And they're not successful because they haven't done the work. And that's really usually the bottom line. What happens is they don't realize the customers are buying you. They're not buying life insurance. Guys, they're never going to see the life insurance. Think about it. These people are making a monthly payment for something they're not going to sit in. They're not going to touch. They're not going to use. All they know is they're making this payment for something that's supposed to take place after they're dead. So keep in mind, they're buying you. And I've sat there and watched agent after agent, I hate to say it, that weren't very good, have a conversation. And what we do at our agency, we listen to the recordings. Everything is recorded. So I'll listen to a client say to an agent, oh, I absolutely need this insurance. My daughter told me to get it. And then at the end, the agent can't close the sale. They're literally telling the agent, I have to have this. My daughter's telling me I need this, and they can't sell. The clients don't buy from them. I've seen this over and over and over. You got to put in the time. You got to work on yourself, study the art of influencing people, put in whatever time it takes to take yourself from being wherever you're at to being much better. What I believe in, this is a way I think. When someone gives me an objection, that is an opportunity to build value and rapport. That's all an objection is. I've made objections part of the application process. That's the way you have to think. If you're not thinking that way, you're going to be in trouble, because I'm going to tell you something. It's not the leads. It's you. When I was selling final expense face-to-face, that first year that I made over $200,000, I was willing to do whatever it took. You don't have to drive around the state of Florida like I did. You don't have to stay in stinky hotel rooms like I did. You don't have to put in the 80 hours plus a week that I did. And I count the 80 hours from when I left the house to when I either got back, if I came back home the same day, or when I went to the hotel room and called it a night. Still over 80 hours a week. It was fine for me because I was making the kind of money that I needed to make. With that being said, hopefully you guys got something out of this video. If you would like that policy summary that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, just email me at doug@ufesonline.com. If you'd like information on our remote final expense sales platform, the only one that I know of where if you say, Doug, I want 30 appointments a day, I can show you what we have to do to get you 30 appointments a day, and you will have 30 appointments on average per day. Just email me at that same address. As always, when you put the needs of your clients first, everything else will usually fall right into place. Now get on out there or get on that headset. The bottom line, whatever you do, make sure you do something good for someone else today. Happy hunting.